You are 40 years old, and you are doing the math for the first time. Not the vague approximate math you have been doing in your head for the past decade, where you told yourself you would figure it out later, and later kept arriving, and you kept telling yourself the same thing. The real math, the actual numbers. You open a compound interest calculator at 11 at night because something shifted this week. Maybe it was a conversation. Maybe it was a number you saw on a statement. Maybe it was just a Tuesday that felt too much like every other Tuesday. You type in your current savings and the monthly amount. You think you could contribute and you hit calculate, and you stared at the number it produced. It was not the number you needed. You sit with that for a moment. Not dramatically, not with a spiral, just with the quiet, specific weight of a person who has just confirmed something they already suspected. The window you imagined was open is smaller than you thought. The version of retirement you pictured, the one at 65, with enough to be comfortable, with enough to stop trading hours for money, with enough to mean something. That version requires a different calculation than the one you just ran, and you are 40 and you are starting now. And the voice in the back of your head, the one that has been there your whole adult life, says something you have heard before. It says you are too late. Here is what you need to understand about that voice. It is not giving you information. It is giving you a feeling dressed up as a fact. The feeling is real. The fact is not because the actual mathematical reality of starting to build wealth at 40 is not the catastrophe that voice is describing. It is something closer to the opposite. It is one of the most powerful financial positions a person can be in, not because 40 is early, but because 40 comes with things that 25 never had. It comes with earning power. It comes with clarity about what you actually want. It comes with the particular motivation of someone who has already felt what it costs to wait. That motivation is not a small thing. That motivation is the engine. You have 20 years before the traditional retirement age. If you use them correctly, those 20 years will do something that 20 years of passive intention could never do. They will build a number large enough to change the structure of your life, not at 65 before that, possibly well before that, depending on what you are willing to do and what you are willing to stop doing, and how seriously you are about to take the next sentence. This is not about sacrifice. This is about decision. You are 40, and you have probably never heard the term catch-up contribution used in a sentence that felt relevant to you. It is a term that exists in tax codes and financial planning documents, and it sounds like something for other people. It is not for other people. It is specifically for you, just not yet. You are 40 now, which means in 10 years. Right, when this wealth-building window is at its most critical, the IRS hands you a bigger shovel. The IRS allows people over 50 to contribute additional money to retirement accounts beyond the standard annual limit, and the standard limit itself is not small. In 2024, you can contribute up to $23,000 to a 401k if your employer offers one. After 50, that number increases by an additional $7,500. If you have access to an IRA, you can contribute $7,000 annually with an extra $1,000 catch-up after 50. These are not minor adjustments. These are structural advantages built into the system for the exact situation you are in. Most people your age do not use them, because most people your age are still telling themselves they will figure it out later. You are not going to do that anymore, but the catch-up contribution is only half the equation. The other half is the savings rate, and this is where most conversations about late start investing go quiet, because they do not want to say the thing that needs to be said. So here it is. If you are starting seriously at 40, you cannot save like a 25-year-old. A 25-year-old investing $200 a month has time as their greatest asset. They can be patient, they can be passive. The decades ahead of them will do the heavy lifting. You do not have that. What you have instead is the ability to compress time by increasing the amount. Every additional dollar you contribute in your 40s is worth significantly more than a dollar contributed at 65. Because every dollar you add now has 20 or 25 years of compounding ahead of it. This means the savings rate conversation is not optional. It is the core decision. It is the thing that determines whether you retire at 62 or at 55 or at 52, or whether you are still working at 70 because the math never got serious enough. So what does serious look like? It looks like finding 20% of your income and putting it somewhere that grows. Not 5%, not 10%, which is what most general financial advice recommends, and which is designed for people who started in their 20s. 20% minimum, and if you can get to 30, you get to the good outcomes faster. This is not a comfortable number for most households. It requires you to look at your monthly spending with an honesty that is uncomfortable and a willingness to make decisions that your social environment is not making. It requires you to start treating your future self as a bill that gets paid before everything else. Not after the discretionary spending, not with whatever is left over on the 28th, but first. This is the part where most people reading a piece like this nod along and then do not change anything. Not because they are irresponsible, but because the gap between agreeing with an idea and restructuring your actual monthly behavior is enormous, and no one tells you how to cross it. So here is how you cross it. You automate it before you can argue with it. You set up the transfer for the day after your paycheck arrives, not the day of the day after. So the money moves before your brain has had time to assign it to anything else. You treat it exactly the way you treat rent or your mortgage, not as optional, not as something you do when the month cooperates. It goes every month without a conversation with yourself about whether this is a good month for it. There are no good months. There are only months, and the months pass. And either the money moved or it did not. You are 42 now. You have been doing this for 24 months. Your total contributions across your 401k and your IRA are somewhere between $18,000 and $24,000 a year, depending on your income and what you were able to squeeze out of your spending. Your account balance is somewhere around $40,000 to $50,000, assuming average market returns. And you are feeling something that you did not feel at 40. You are feeling like the machine is real, not complete, not safe, not finished, just real. There is a version of you at 42 that stopped after year one because the balance did not feel like enough. Because you did your math again and the retirement number you calculated, the number you actually need to stop working on someone else's schedule, still felt impossibly far away. That version is common. The distance between where you start and where you need to get is discouraging when you are looking at it in year two. The thing that version of you missed is that you are not supposed to feel like you are almost there at year two. Year two is not almost there. Year two is proof that the mechanism works, that you are capable of doing this, that the behavior is established, and that the next 18 years have a foundation they did not have before. You stay. Here is the thing about building wealth at 40 that changes the conversation entirely, and that almost nobody talks about directly. You probably do not need as much as you think. The number people cite when they talk about retirement. The $1 million, the $2 million, the $3 million. Depending on who you are listening to, those numbers are usually calculated for people who plan to retire at 65. And live for 30 more years while maintaining the same spending they had during their peak earning years. That calculation does not apply to you the way it seems like it does, and here is why. If you are building with intention, starting at 40, your spending is going to change. Not because you deprive yourself, but because the process of genuinely tracking your money and making conscious decisions about it over 20 years will rewire what you want. You will stop spending on the things that produce nothing and spend more deliberately on the things that do. Your baseline cost of a good life will be lower than it is today, not because you are living worse, but because you are living more accurately. You will know what actually matters to you, and you will spend there and stop spending everywhere else. This matters for the number because the number is not some fixed destination. The number is your annual spending multiplied by 25. That is the basic formula. You need 25 times your yearly expenses to sustain withdrawals indefinitely at a 4% rate without depleting the principal. So if you need $60,000 a year to live well, The number is $1.5 million. If you need $50,000, the number is $1.25 million. If your spending drops to $40,000 because you paid off the house and the kids are grown, and you no longer spend on the performance of success, the number is $1 million. These are not the same target. The difference between needing $1.5 million and needing $1 million is the difference between years of additional work and the option to stop sooner. The performance of success, that phrase, is worth sitting with. Most spending in your 30s and early 40s is not actually about the thing being purchased. It is about the signal, the car that communicates that you are doing fine, the house in the neighborhood that says you belong here, the vacations posted where people who care about such things will see them, the restaurants, the wardrobe, the renovation. Not all of it, but more of it than you are comfortable admitting. And none of it is building anything. None of it is creating a future where you own your time. It is creating a present that looks a certain way and a future that looks exactly like the present, which means still working, still dependent on a paycheck, still without the option to leave. Quiet wealth is the alternative. Quiet wealth is the person at the dinner table who does not talk about money, because their relationship with it is private and solid and not in need of external validation. Quiet wealth is driving the paid-off car in the driveway for 3 more years, because 3 more years of that car is 2 years earlier of freedom. Quiet wealth is the deliberate rejection of visible consumption in exchange for invisible accumulation. It does not look like anything from the outside. It does not signal. It does not perform. And at 62, while the people who are performing are still working, quiet wealth is the reason you are not. You are 48. You have been at this for 8 years. Your contributions have totaled somewhere between $144,000 and $192,000, depending on the year and your income. Your account balance at average market returns is somewhere around $250,000 to $300,000. You have crossed a threshold that changes the psychology of the whole project. Your money is now making a meaningful amount of money. In an average year, the market is returning somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 on your existing balance, without a single additional contribution from you. That is more than $2,000 a month growing silently in the background of your life. The second contributor has arrived. Time is now working alongside you the way the book said it would, and the way you could not quite believe when you were reading about it at 40, because $250,000 felt so far away that it might as well have been theoretical. It is not theoretical. It is in the account, and you did not get there by waiting for the right moment or the right amount or the right version of your life. You got there by contributing every month for 8 years and not stopping when the market corrected, and not stopping when the year was hard, and not stopping when the balance felt too small to mean anything. The market corrected, by the way, twice. There was a stretch in year 3 where you watched your balance drop by nearly 20% over several months, and the number in the account was less than what you had put in. You remember where you were when you checked it. You remember the specific quality of the feeling, and you did not sell. You transferred the money on schedule. You bought shares at the lower price because the schedule does not negotiate with market conditions. And when the market recovered, which it did, the shares you bought during the drop were worth more than what you paid. And your overall portfolio recovered and then exceeded where it had been before the correction. This happens every time. Not on a predictable schedule, not on a timeline that feels reasonable when you were in the middle of it, but every time. Every correction in the history of the American market has eventually been followed by recovery and new highs. Not because the market is guaranteed to perform, but because the underlying thing the market represents. Human economic activity does not permanently stop. You are not betting on a number. You are betting on the same thing everyone who came before you bet on. When they let their money sit and grow across decades. They were right. Historically, they were right. You are 55. You have been doing this for 15 years. Total contributions are somewhere around $270,000 to $360,000. Your account balance at average returns is somewhere between $600,000 and $750,000. You have more money in this account than you imagined was possible when you started. The number is not just real. The number is doing things. At $700,000 with a 10% average annual return, your portfolio grows by $70,000 in a single year without a single additional deposit. That is more than many people earn at their jobs. It is more than you were making in your 30s. And you still have years ahead of you where you can continue contributing, continue compounding, and continue widening the gap between what you deposited and what you have. You start to do a different kind of math now, not the catastrophic math of 40, not the hopeful math of 42, but the serious operational math of someone who is looking at a real exit. You look at your spending. You look at what your life actually costs versus what it costs to perform the version of your life you used to maintain. You find that the number is lower than you expected. The mortgage is close to done. The children, if you have them, are moving toward independence. The things you bought in your 40s to signal that you had arrived are either paid off or replaced with simpler things that serve the same function without the price tag. You calculate 25 times your actual annual spending. The number you get is somewhere around $1 to $1.25 million, depending on the life you are running. Your current balance is already at $700,000. You are not done yet, but you can see it. You are 60. Total contributions are around $360,000 to $480,000 across 20 years. Your account balance at historically average returns is somewhere between $1.3 million and $1.6 million. You have crossed the number you calculated at 40 with your hand shaking slightly at an open calculator on a Tuesday night. That number is behind you. You are past it. At $1.5 million, your portfolio generates roughly $150,000 in a good year and roughly $60,000 in a withdrawal using the 4% rule without touching the principal. $60,000 is a livable income for a person who has paid off debt, reduced consumption, and stopped spending on the performance of success. $60,000 for a person living on their own terms in a life they built deliberately is not a constraint. It is freedom, and you are 60. Not 65, not 70, not still waiting. You are 60 with the option to stop. Maybe you take it now. Maybe you take it in 2 more years when the balance is slightly larger and the confidence is fully settled. Maybe you shift to part-time work doing something you actually care about because you can afford to be paid less for it. The point is that the option exists. You built the option not by being extraordinary, not by catching a break, not by timing a trade correctly in a year that cooperated. You built it by starting seriously at 40 and not stopping for 20 years. The person you were at 40, doing the math for the first time, sitting with the uncomfortable number the calculator produced, that person did not believe this was possible. That person thought 40 was too late. That person heard a voice that called the whole thing over before it started. That voice was not giving you information. It was giving you a reason to keep waiting, and you did not take it. Here is what the numbers do not show and what they never show when someone lays out a timeline like this one. They do not show the specific month and year for when you almost paused, when something broke in the house and the trip came up, and the account felt like the easiest thing to pause because it was not a bill anyone would call you about. They do not show you transferring the money anyway, fixing the thing another way, going on a cheaper version of the trip and feeling quietly like yourself for having done it. They do not show the conversations you stopped having about keeping up with what everyone around you was doing with their money. They do not show the slow renegotiation of your identity from someone who was building the appearance of wealth to someone who was building the actual thing. They do not show what it feels like to stop having a number that scares you, to move through your 50s with a different posture, to look at your job differently when you know it is a choice and not a requirement, to sit with the version of financial security that is not flashy and is not celebrated on social media, and does not look like anything from the outside, and is quietly the most important thing you ever built. The most expensive lie in personal finance is that there is an amount too small to start with and an age too late to start at. Those two beliefs together have cost more people more years of options than any market crash or bad investment ever could. They are not facts. They are feelings, and feelings, unlike time, can be overridden. You are 40. The calculator is open. The machine is waiting. Whatever you type it in tonight.